Hi, this is the first day of the CBA training, that's Certified Business Analysis training. Today we will learn the concepts of business analysis. So in this basically we will have following areas. One is that we will emphasize on the introduction, and then we will see what is a history, and then we will talk about history of the business analysis, how it has basically become a mainstream professional, which wasn't the case few years ago. And then we will talk about what is the business analysis, and then few definitions of business analysis. Then we will emphasize on what the business analyst roles and responsibilities. These are the roles and responsibilities we will understand throughout the project, and we will also try to align them as per the software development life cycle. Okay, so and we will see what are the software development life cycle and how the business analyst will play a significant role at each phases. This may change obviously based on the type of project and based on the organizational standards and the policies and the framework which is defined for the business analyst. But we have taken a generic the concept and applied. Okay. Then we will talk about the scope of business analysis work, and the last part we will talk about what are the other activities and the skills are involved or the required for the business analyst to perform the role as a business analyst. Okay, so this is a basically overview of today's session. Okay, so let me just go through the introduction part. Okay. Yes, the introduction here, what we talk about is it's information technology is an integral part of every business and business function. So if you are looking at, there is no business which is not touched by IT. IT is used for various purposes in the business, either for improving the processes or generating the reports, sending out the reports, sending the emails, or implementing a complex applications. And if you see the companies like Alibaba and Amazon, they are using it, taken the IT to a very different level, where you will see the robots are actually doing the significant work in the warehouses, where they are been given some instructions how and how to pick up the items, and how do they stack it up, how do they send it for the packaging purposes, uh, and that is how they manage the entire warehouse operations. As per the recent news, it is mentioned that the Alibaba is using almost 70% of the operations through the, the robots are performing 70% of the operations in Alibaba warehouses. That's very, very significant. So that's what we are talking about, the complexity and the nature of the IT is nature of role the IT is playing in the business. It must have started somewhere at the POS, that's a point of sale, or the billing systems, and then it has basically moved to a different level now altogether. Now we can't even in our personal life also, we can't even think about our life without a smartphone, which even handles every part of our life, including the near and dear, the numbers, contact. That was the basic part of basically calling. But other than that, we also communicate and connect with our the friends, families, relatives through social media, through other sources. And other than that, we also use the news, the finance, health, and the even entertainment. We use the smartphone. Okay, so the technology is basically part of our both professional as well as personal life. Okay. Now, as a business analyst, you are not, you don't need to be expert in the IT to do or perform your non-IT role. For example, if you are working as stakeholders, you may not have to know the IT part or the intricacies of the IT, but you must know what the technology can do for you. Okay, and that is where the business analyst will play a significant role. Business analyst may have a different kind of role, but knowing and the understand what and how IT role is played for the business and business function is most important part, because if you know that, then you will be able to guide your stakeholders and the management how the IT can be used to improve the overall operations or overall performance of the organization. It could be improvement for a small process, or it could be the improvement could be applicable to a department or to the organization. Okay, and it also understand what it can and it cannot do for you and your business. Again, this part is basically emphasizing more on the latest technology introduced in day-to-day business lives. You may find there are several technologies are introduced, tools are introduced, and they are used for different purposes. But your role is that you have to ensure that you need to know what the technology will do to your business. Is it relevant? Important part is to know, is it relevant? Okay, so if it is relevant, then how relevant it is. So the two questions a business analyst will always be asking himself or herself is it relevant to us? To us, it means to your the business or the stakeholders. And the second one is how relevant it is. Okay, so these two questions. Now I'm going to quote here the author. He is Jim Collin, who has written a very famous book called Good to Great. What he has done in the book is he and his team have spent over a decade to understand why certain companies are good and why certain companies have become great over the period of time, and they sustained that greatness for a very long time. So while analyzing that, he has come up a few points and a few suggestions, and one of them he has touched on the technology. So that point he's talking about is that using right technology becomes acceleration of movement. So it will help you to improve the what we call overall operations, performance, productivity, etc. But it is not the creator of it. That's very most important for is it is not the creator of it. It will, the technology is used to improve. Technology is everything, it's not everything. Okay, so you are going to use it as a catalyst rather than a originator. Okay, so for example, I would talk about it. If you are looking at the hospital or hospitality industry, their core basically business is provide healthcare solutions or to the patients. So their core business will always be focused on the best medicine, best what we call hospital experience for the patient, and the best what we call success rate in and the success they could define in various ways. So that is basically their core business. If you are talking to them the latest technology and which it may not be relevant to them, it may not even enthusiasm them. What they will look into that, what kind of investment I'm going to do and how relevant is that investment. Is it going to improve the patient what we call the experience in the hospital? Is it going to improve our inventory system, or it is going to improve some other supports part, you see? So those are what basically their concern. Same thing, another example if I want to give you from the finance industry, look at that in the finance industry, if you go to the bank core business is basically helping the people to manage their money, right, for the customers. So that's a safe place where you park your money, and again you can accept the transfer from your friends or your employers or any other people who wants to basically transfer, and you can also transfer to various people, right? So the bank is basically allowing that as a transfer, allowing you to maintain your account, again allowing you to invest into various products, and so and so forth. But the bank core business will remain as a banking, where every customer will go and bank with them, and again they may have various what we call services. Other than that, they may also have a service of bill payment or paying the taxes and so on. But they may use a technology to improve. For example, earlier you may be going to the bank to do the banking. Later on, they may provide you online banking solution. But however, it is the experience is changed, but the core business remains same. That's what he is emphasizing. Okay. The good to great companies never began their transition with pioneering the technology. Now, important factor, they are not basically begun transition with the pioneering technology, for simple reason that you cannot make good use of technology until you know which technology are relevant. This is what I just mentioned earlier. You must know which technology is relevant and how relevant it is for your business. Then you need to become a pioneer in application of that technology. This sentence is so significant for every business analyst to understand. What does it mean? You need to pioneer in application of that technology. How you apply the technology is again the core part of business analysis role, because if you don't understand, or if you are not part of that success story, then you will be basically um, uh, creating a huge blunder for the organization. Here we talk about is that when a solution is identified, and how relevant is the solution for the organization, and how if effectively we collaborate with the stakeholders and elicit those requirements and make that technology or the application or the solution relevant for the organization as well as for the stakeholders, and we are able to implement it smoothly. The way it is implemented and that will matter, and after the post implementation, the way it is used by the users, so that is a success. So that exactly what they're talking about, and majority of the problems happens at this stage itself. Either you miss the requirement, or you miss the relevance, or there is some the dynamics are there and the things don't go well, and for some reason the mismatch or ambiguity or confusion and conflict with the stakeholders and the organizational need and the technology and the team which is developing. And when the everybody is not in the sync or not in the same line, so that the implementation will definitely will fail, or it will not be as per the expectations. So this is most important factor, is that when you identify the solution, ensure that you implement the solution effectively, successfully, and the success of that implementation you will only come to know when the solution goes into the BAU, and how effectively that solution is used by users, and how long that solution stays in the operations or stays in the life cycle. That's are the key point you need to consider when you are talking about the success and the failure of your implementation. Okay. Any question? Okay. If there are no questions, then I would like to go to the next stage, is that is introduction. Before I start this one, I want to give you a real life example of a previous section. Let me just go back a little bit because it's very relevant. If you see here implementation, we are talking about the success and failure of implementation. There is one, there are various examples are there. The examples which I wish to give you, like there are two examples here. Uh, uh, there was a new machine introduced, and it was basically um, giving the radiation to the cancer patient. And this incident happened in early 90s, 92, 93, I guess. So in one of the Canadian hospital, the machine was sophisticated at that time, and that machine supposed to basically give the radiation to the cancer patient based on the amount specified by a nurse. and the nurse would basically take the patient to the radiation room and the operate the machine, and everything is when the machine starts, the nurse would close the door and leave, so that there is no impact of the radiation outside. However, when the nurse was given a training to the sorry, the nurse was given a training by the company which manufactured that machine. So at the time, they have given all the instructions, and nurse will also felt confident. She didn't think that the machine, there could be any fault in the machine, and since it looked sophisticated and highly the structure, highly organized, the equipment, and but when she experimented in the first, and when she come back and to see the patient, then she found that patient was lying on the floor with the almost third-degree burn. The reason they have the reason when they investigated was the machine had a faulty software. It means it's supposed to go through a loop and stop depending on the amount of radiation was fed in. That input is fed in by the nurse, and once that the machine will understand and stop at that loop. But however, with the software issue, that it just went on into the infinite loop, so it just went on and on, so it didn't stop it, and that has basically resulted into third-degree burn. Of course, the patient sued hospital, and hospital sued the machine makers, and that's how things have happened. So you may think about how it could be a life-threatening situation. Primarily, if we come across that robots are performing surgeries, and this kind of examples are quite scary, because the robots and the everything is basically what we call has some amount of the applications used, and some is basically some amount of instruction given by the doctors who are operating on a patient, right? And the second example is coming from the Knight Frank, is another the trading company which they wanted to basically implement a new trading software, and the day they implemented, they wanted to just test how the trading happens within the organization. They didn't mean to go in the market and you know mm, do the trading, but however, in the testing, the by mistake the machine went and did the what transactions rapidly, and those transactions, when it went into the market and actually started functioning, so it has those with the rapid transaction, the organization has incurred $440 million loss. So that is quite significant. So these are the basically some of the failures, if you see, can help us out to understand what is the significance of the requirement, and what is the significance of implementations. Okay. Now again, let's go to the next level. Okay, here we talk about it. Just a second. Here we talk about basically business analysis is one of the most interesting, dynamic, creative field where an engineer's idea gets visibly transferred to become a business or a personal solution. Think about Hitachi. Hitachi has invented the chip that would hold 1 GB data at that time. I'm talking about, okay, that I'm talking about uh, in 2000, I guess, yeah, and just before the iPod was launched. So I'm not getting the exact year, but at the time, Steve Jobs and the Tim Cook were visiting the Hitachi factory, and Tim Cook came to know that they have invented a chip, but Hitachi didn't know what to do about it. And the Tim Cook had an idea, because Steve Jobs and they had that what we call digital music system. That's what they have started with, creating that the digital music and using the software application, but they could not hold the what we call the data, so it just remain in the big machine, so that you have the what we call hardware, which can store the songs, music, but you can't transfer it to somewhere else. But then they had a technology that that could basically produce the music digitally, but they did not have the technology to store the large amount of data required for storing the musics. So this is where the idea came in. They bought it for some $1 million, and they used that chip and integrated with the application, and that is how the iPod has come into picture. And from there, there is no looking back. What Apple has made the journey a very, very, very successful journey, and reached to the $1 trillion company, right? So this is basically what we talk about, how the ingenious idea gets visibly transferred and become the business or personal solution. So that solution was basically, they found one is A's application and how they use that the chip and put them together and created the iPod. Okay. Now second, basically you may also find there are various other ideas are there. For example, you may see the Paytime, right? Paytm, right? Which is basically helping you to transfer the money. Before that, if you see a few 10 years ago, it was a PayPal was highly successful. The concept was that you don't want to disclose your bank account to the third party, right? So these people give you an interface, and they protect your the personal data, and also allow you to basically do the transaction online or through the cell phone, right? So this is basically what we talk about, the idea transferred into a solution. Today's business environment revolves around business analysis and the ability to transfer an idea into practical solution to successfully build or enhance the organizational capacity. Now, all these examples we talked about, they all basically revolves around basically same concept. We have an idea, and how the idea is basically implemented in a practical solution. So business analysis is all about that. We may have some concept or the idea that is an opportunity, or there is a problem which we want to solve the problem. So that's our business need, and from there the journey will start, and from there we will see, okay, this is a problem or an opportunity, this is a possible solution, and how the solution is implemented successfully and it is up and running. So that is basically what is all about the business analysis, and how a business analyst along with other team members basically contribute to this implementation of the particular idea or the solution. Okay. Now we talk about little bit about the history. The role of business analysis in the IT sector is fairly recent one. While software development is almost 50 years old, the field of business analysis is more recent, barely 10 years ago. Now I would say 15 years ago. If you see in the 2000, if anybody, you ask anyone what is a business analyst, they were not knowing. And at the time, I still remember one of the IT company, a very leading IT company, CMM level 5 in India, they had an issue with the client, and the development team had a tussle. The reason is, what the client was giving the instruction to the developers did not know, and they would develop something else, and the client didn't. And that happened for 3 months, not 3 years. Again, it is 3 months. So that the client has reached to a very frustrating level. So when the project manager was roped in, then he has basically mentioned, he happened to be my friend, and he said they have started a concept of that, what we call MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, so that we will, what requirement you give, we will write and send it to you, and when you confirm, then we will provide. So that's basically what I'm talking about, 2001, 2002. Okay, so those are the concept I'm talking about. I mean, we're part of the CMM level 5 company. Of course, the IEEE have already defined the what is the requirement and quality of the requirement in 1998, but all those were not used or referred actively in the real life situation. So when the IIBA and the British Computer Society have introduced the business analysis to the industry, and they promoted the cause, and after that it has become like more visible, and the roles of the business analyst were more structured, and they were more had a proper scope, and that's how the business analysis has basically taken off. If you see here, the IEEE and the PMI, they actively promoted a lot of the project management related the um, standards, and IEEE significantly have mentioned the software, the requirement quality in the 802 cause, that's the number basically. And if you see within that, there are several the clauses are there that basically specify the quality of the requirement. However, project management PMI has not explicitly mentioned about the quality. They have incorporated that into the part of the project management. Okay. But after the IIBA and the BCS has come, it has basically gained the momentum, and they have contributed to the industry in creating the standards basically. Okay. You think about the situation where the project managers coming from a computer background, and they have to basically interact with the client who are coming from a completely domain background, and it was extremely inefficient situation where the project managers limited knowledge in the domain and the stakeholders limited knowledge in the technology. So there were, at the time, it was a lot of struggle due to this the mismatch in the understanding, and again there was lots of what we call confusion and conflict and delay happened. When the business analyst came in on board, so they basically were hired by the organizations. They came from the top the management schools, and who could understand the finance or healthcare or the supply chain or something. So those were the basically the functional business analyst, or the functional analyst they called earlier. They played say the BA role. In India, basically IT companies hired from the IIB or IIM. Okay, so who basically in turn worked on the project or collaborated with the client in order to understand the client requirements and translated those into the IT requirement or solution requirement. Okay, so that's the basically a brief history about business analysis. Now we talk about the business analysis concept here, and in this case it will be the business analysis is the field of rigorous and methodical analysis of business and the stakeholder needs, that is solving the problem or the new opportunity through a various analytical and investigating techniques to identify the problem, analyze the problem, and recommend the possible solution options. Now here our role is recommending the solution options, not making the decision. Okay, let the stakeholder understand the pros and cons of all the solution options and make a decision. Business analysis field also covers the coordinating, monitoring, and supporting the entire development and implementation strategy of the proposed solution. Here we are talking about how the business analyst role will be there throughout the life cycle of that solution. Okay, so we will our role will start when the idea is generated, and our role will basically continue till the solution is goes into the user community or in the BAU mode, that is business as usual. Then we talk about business analysis also primarily business technology management or the optimization. This is a new terminology that supports the business analysis activities along with the project management, process management, IT management. So how the technology is managed and basically optimized in the business, and help the organization and the stakeholders to improve the efficiency. Okay. So that is all about your business technology management and optimization. Now there are few definitions are there, and I want to know, do you want to continue or you want to basically have it in the next session? Hi, do you want me to continue? Okay, I will continue then. So for some more minutes. Okay, so let us talk about the definitions. Now here I have listed few definitions. The first definition is coming from the Bebok version number 3, that talks about business analysis is a practice of enabling change in an enterprise. So here basically business analysis is revolves around implementing change or enabling the change. Okay, change could be from the current state to the future state by defining the needs we talked about, problem or the opportunity, problem or opportunity. Okay, and recommending the solution to deliver values to the stakeholders. Now recommending the solution, if we have a problem or an opportunity, we see possible solutions and we may recommend them, so that will deliver a value to the stakeholders and the organization. Business analysis enables the enterprise to articulate the needs and rationale for the change, and to design and describe the solution that can deliver the value. Now here if I break down that information into the sentence into 2-3 lines, 2-3 ways. 1A is that it enables the organization to articulate needs, that is business needs. What is the organizational goal and mission and goal and objectives, and how the change is aligned to that mission, goal and objectives. In case if they are not aligned, how do we basically help the organization to align them? Either aligning the mission, goal, objectives, or aligning the solution needs. Okay, and the rationale for the change. Rationale for the change, we build the business case and we will justify the investment required for the change or investment required, that is we will prepare the ROI, return on investment, or business case, that is a benefit versus the cost versus benefit. What is the cost of the solution and what are the possible or expected benefits, and the benefits also will cover your tangible and intangible benefits. Then we talk about also the risk. Then we will talk, there will be additional analysis we will undertake, that is benefit versus risk. So what benefits we are expecting, and what kind of a risk we may face, and is it worth it? So that's the rationale we will talk about, and from there it will basically help us out to present the business case, that is the benefits, the risk and feasibility, as well as the value it will bring in. Okay, and the business analysis is performed on a varieties of initiatives within an enterprise. It may be strategic, tactical, or operational. Okay, so at different level the business analysis can happen. Strategic is a long term, tactical is a short term or interim, and operational is ongoing processes. Okay, business analysis may be performed within the boundaries of a project or throughout the enterprise evaluation and continuous improvement. Okay, so this is it simply says that it can be done within the boundaries throughout the organization enterprise evolution. So there is a when you it is at the inception of the organization till the termination phase or till the end of the organization life cycle, we may need various what we call technologies to improve to run and improve the operations. Okay, it can be used to understand the current state and define the future state and determine the activities required to move from current to future states. Now this is important. See, when we identify a problem or the opportunity, we first understand what we have, what is the current state in terms of what is the current operations, what are the current technologies, features, functionalities, people and the skill and other infrastructures. So we understand the current capability, current process, current functionalities and current operations and other areas. Then from there we see, okay, what is the future state, then where we want to go, what will be the future operations or what will be the future processes, and what kind of a people will be there, what kind of additional skill sets are required, what could be the additional infrastructure we need in order to operate the new solution. So that's basically all about the operating model. New operating model will basically be proposed. So that is, we talk about identifying the current state, and based on the current state and based on the solution what we have recommended, we basically define the future state. Okay. Next we talk about, there are some other definitions are there, and those are definitions we talk about it basically. BCS is British Computer Societies, and this definition is quite good. It is an internal consultancy role. Well, it could be internal as well as external also, that has a responsibility for investigating business system, in identifying options for improving the business systems and bridging the needs of the business with the use of IT. Okay, now here the definition is more focused on the business systems and the IT. Well, it is possible some of the solution may not also require IT, or some may require IT. Okay, so but of course most of the solution do require IT. So it's a limited definition, but it's a good definition actually. Investigating the business systems, that is what we have, identifying what we want, and basically bridging the gap between what we have and what we need with the use of IT. But of course it has not incorporated the identifying the business need and defining the solution and justifying the investment, that is a business case. So these parts they have not basically incorporated, and also the extensive strategy analysis takes place, that is defining the current state and defining the future state. So that part has basically is not been incorporated. It's more confined to the IT. Now again one more definitions are taken. This is a version number 2, Bebok guide version number 2, page 3, that it talks about business analysis is a set of a task and technique. So that task means this series of activities, and the task we take using some of the BA techniques, okay, to liaison among the stakeholders in order to understand the structure, policies, operations of an organization. So in general we understand the organization. They have missed out on the product, services and other part, okay, and recommend a solution that enables the organization to achieve goals. So organization may have multiple goals, for example improve the operations, or replace the legacy system, or implement the new regulatory requirement. So like that, so you can have any of the what we call solution or the goals that is basically required to be fulfilled. Then there is a modern analyst definition, so you can basically read that. I'm not going to basically focus on that. Okay. Now the question is, who is business analyst? There's a very confusing question. When we say who is business analyst, means a business analyst is he who works as a liaison function among the stakeholders. It could be internal, external. Internal you may have a users, SMEs and stakeholders, okay, and the external could be regulators, vendors, suppliers, so on, in order to understand the structure, policies, operations of an organization and recommend a solution. So he may be basically a part of one or more activities and still be called as a business analyst. For example, he may be doing only strategy analysis, but he is still part of the business analysis. We may call him as a business analyst. He is responsible for analyzing the business need for their clients and stakeholders to help in identifying their business problems and propose a solution. So you may also involved in identifying the business need and proposing the solution options. So you could be anywhere in that, and either you may be doing the requirement elicitation, you may be doing strategy analysis, you may be doing market analysis, you may be writing the functional requirement document, you may be coordinating and working closely with the testers to ensure that the solution has the required quality criteria, and so on. Okay. When it comes to basically roles and responsibilities, some of the roles and responsibilities mentioned here are basically to understand their business needs and apply the analytical skills to business request, Now apply the analytical skill. Basically we have to understand when the business need, that is problem and opportunity, has arisen. So we will see our analyzing ability to identify what is the impact source of the problem, what is the impact of the problem, and the impact in terms of the processes, on the database, on the technology, and people, okay, and what is the way forward. So this is basically various ways we are basically analyzing the request. Define and detail these business needs in the form of requirement. So what we do is that we define and details this business need in the form of requirement, that is a high level requirements or business requirement, and detail level or the solution related requirement can be called as a functional and non-functional requirement. And we communicate these business wants or the needs in a clear and unambiguous manner. That's documenting these requirements in a structured way, and that we may call it as a template. That's a business requirement document or software requirement specification, or it could be product roadmap, or it could be functional requirement document, okay, and we present them. Then we ensure that these requests or the requirements are consistent and not in a contradiction with each other. Now we need to basically ensure that these requests and the requirements are consistent, okay, not contradicting with each other. So that is a key part the business analyst has to basically consider. Ensure that these requests and the requirements are now understand these requests from the business perspective and translate them into a form that can be understood and acted on by service provider. So your role may be also defining the requirement and document them, and communicate and collaborate with your the service provider if the solution is basically developed and delivered by a service provider, that is the IT vendor, okay. It could be also takes the form of ability statement, smaller sub requirement for and functions, task, etc., and it can be used by project manager in the work breakdown structure. So this is basically you are working closely with the project manager in order to communicate the requirement. Comprehensive analysis several areas such as business subject knowledge, IT capabilities, feasibilities, cost, relevance, data, and dependencies across the other business and project areas. So it is role is not related to only one project, but you will have to also see how it will impact with other project, and how do you need to collaborate for you, your needs with other system for feasibility, for the cost and other dependencies, okay. So your role is much more than just eliciting the requirement and presenting the solution options. Here we have some of the specific roles we have mentioned is basically activities. BA leads all activities related to business case, that's we talked about, rationale for the solution development, and requirement development, that's basically elicitation, documenting the requirement, confirming the requirement, and so on. Then requirement management through the rigor of activities across the business solution life cycle. So you may have eliciting the requirement, documenting them, presenting them, structuring them, putting into the BRD or FRD or in the both, and obtaining the sign off and communicating back with multiple stakeholders. So that also is what we talk about. The main challenge is to apply the analytical skill to the business request, which are often high level and lack the information. So how your analytical and your the interpersonal skill works here in order to understand the business request which is at a high level, and how do you define to the detail level, so that translating that business and stakeholder requirement to the solution requirement. This is the key part which business analyst has to do. Not only communicate these business wants and needs in the clear and unambiguous way, but also ensure that these requirements are consistent and not in the contradiction with each other. This is just we talked about all in one line. There is one diagram, short diagram I would talk about. Roles and responsibilities. Here we do is a strategic planning. What is a business need and what are the possible options are there, okay, and then what justification of the solution. And then we do the enterprise analysis to understand what is the current state, and based on that we can basically the solution options and the current state and the current capabilities, we can basically define the future state. From the future state, then we can basically talk about the requirements which will be part of the solution, which will be considered as a first phase or second phase or in the near future, like that, and then we derive the requirement. From the requirement, then we will design and construct the solution, and after that we test the solution, we coordinate with the testing team and ensure that the requirements are um, has minimum criteria to implement, and then we deliver the requirement in the business environment or the user environment, right? And once the solution is settled down after initial the issues and the bugs and the processes, everything get resolved, then it goes into the operational maintenance. And now in the operational maintenance, again it may basically we need to enrich and enhance the solution, so we may have to basically what we call implement new changes in the form of features or functionalities or fine tuning the solution. At the time again this cycle will start, that is a strategic planning, enterprise analysis, requirement design and construction, testing and delivery. Okay, and another diagram if you see, that also same, but it is a linear one. The business analyst, he will plan for the business analysis, planning and monitoring. He will elicit the requirement, he will document the requirement, he will confirm the requirement, he will analyze them and validate the requirement. The business, organization and operational requirements, that becomes, right, that's your functional requirement document. Now there is a last two slides in just 2 minutes. So we are, as we already talked about the previous, this part actually, this is the same as here mentioned here, strategic planning, and this, the explanation of that diagram is here. All the roles we mentioned are here. Okay. Just a second. Enterprise analysis is basically we analyze the organization from the solution perspective and to see whether organization is ready to basically accept the solution. For example, a solution may need a particular database or particular the technology or particular setup or the people with certain skill sets, right? So then we identify these are the capabilities what we have, and this is the additional capabilities we may need if we want to implement a solution, and are we ready for that? Sometimes the project goes on hold because the organization may not have enough capabilities, and at the time they may not be able to implement. I'll give you one example. It is not only enterprise but it is also industry analysis. If you see, Arzu.com is the first company which wanted to basically sell the tickets, airline tickets online. This was a idea of Sabir Bhatia, who has invented Hotmail.com. So when they have implemented this idea, at the time they didn't do the business case or the feasibility study. During those 1998, 99 I guess was 99 or 2000. At the time, the India did not have the online payment options. Secured online payment option has started only recently, about maybe 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, right? So that idea, when people could not buy the ticket online because they could not make the payment, and banks and other financial institutes were not ready to share the data with the payment gateways. Now we have a bill desk and all the payment gateways who are basically interface between the bank and the what we call online payment, right? So they are a payment gateway. So this kind of a facility was not available. So because of this, the and then third part was most important, was credit card penetration. Earlier days we did not have a credit card because we never thought the credit card is basically I mean, credit card was not used by many people in 2000, and then even they didn't trust the online payment options because of the security reason. So the whole business the whole thing has basically failed at that time. Now they are doing better, I guess, but the idea at that time did not work out. So you have to do the what is organization capability, is the market ready for this particular solution, okay, and whether organization is ready for the solution. All those things we have to basically analyze and before we implement a solution. That's the enterprise analysis, enterprise and market analysis. Now here in the roles and responsibility at a very high level, it is mentioned a phase is business analysis role, phase is that idea and business idea and the request, feasibility of the requirement and overall software solution, that is what we have basically defining. In the feasibility solution, we ensure that the business case is appropriate and accepted by the sponsorer after studying our analysis on which we have presented, that is benefit, cost versus benefit and the benefit versus risk, okay. Then we talk about the requirement analysis. In the requirement analysis, basically we are planning for the requirement, that is planning BA, and then gathering, that is eliciting the requirement, documenting, communicating, confirming, analyzing them, what are in the scope, what are out of the scope, and documenting them, okay. In the planning also, we are, that is a project planning, we are basically business requirements are prepared and the functional requirements are also ready, that's a functional requirement document, and they have been reviewed, prototypes are prepared, and use cases or other designs, which design or models are required, they are also part of the functional requirement document. So when we during the planning phase, if we do all of them, then in the design phase, these the functional requirement document is used and to refer as basically the key document for preparing the architectural diagram or planning for the releases for the project delivery, okay. This is what we talk. In the development phase, our role is basically monitoring the development work, ensuring that functional requirements are basically working as it is specified in the functional requirement document, reviewing the test case, providing the sign off, managing the change requirement, and so on and so forth, okay. So basically this is all about the today's session, that's the introduction to business analysis, okay. So next session we will talk about the SDLC. And in the SDLC, we will learn all the phases in the generic manner, and the end of the this session there is also we have is summary of SDLC phases and the aligned those phases with the BA role. So what role a BA will play during each phase has also been specified. So some part of this information is also clubbed in that session, okay.